This is more or less how they dressed. It was all wool. It was hot as heck. If you notice this, you carry this because of this musket. Black powder is very dirty. So you need to clean that area. You use this. And then to make sure that the vent hole is open, you use this. Because if you notice on the mannequins, they have black stuff on their face. That's why, because of the powder. And have you held these before? Because they did. They're pretty heavy. About 10 and a half pounds, about 54 inches long. Okay, so y'all don't mind, I'm gonna take off my coat. And my hat. Okay, my presentation is on the Republic of the Rio Grande, which went from 18 January to 6 November 1840. It didn't last long at all because the army got defeated. There are three personages that I want to focus on because of their connection to the Republic, but also here at Battle of Palo Alto, 1846. So Ruben, if you put that, Canales. General Antonio Canales Rocio was the commander-in-chief of the Army of the Republic of the Rio Grande. He, what I consider a traitor, because when this failed and the American Army was coming down, 1846, 6 years later, he wrote a letter to General Taylor offering to secure the border if you give me the resources to start the Republic of the Rio Grande. Of course, Taylor turned him down. He came here with the army, Mexican army, and fought here against Taylor. Okay, so that's Canales. Okay, Ruben, next one. Mariano Arista was the one that defeated the army of the Rio Grande. Right outside of Saltillo, that's where the last battle was. Yeah. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention about Canales, the guy before. I guess he went with as the wind blew because when he surrendered, he quickly accepted a commission as an officer in Santa Anna's army. Yeah, heck with it. Those guys were fighting, but who cares? And Mariano Arista, he became president of Mexico afterwards. But if you look at the years, that gives you an example of Mexican politics. He wasn't in office for very long because there was always a movement to get out of this president, get rid of that president. He was also the commander of a Mexican army here, Palo Alto, and then the next day at Resaca de la Palma. Next one. Now this one I think is the most interesting. Jose Maria Jesus de Carvajal. He was here during the Texas War for Independence, 1836. We mentioned Santa Ana before. He was a landowner, was pretty well off, but because he wouldn't take sides, he wouldn't fight against Mexico, and he wouldn't fight for the Texans. Let me see, it was Rusk, a Lieutenant Rusk came in. You gonna stay neutral? Yes, I am. Okay, get out of here. And they kicked him out. Wow. They took away all his lands, all his property, and he had to go to La Victoria and stay with the De Leon family, which are the ones that founded Victoria, the town or city of Victoria. And after that, they say that he was angry at the Texans for the rest of his life. And then what makes it interesting is that the Cortina Wars happened in 1859 to 1861, 62. He was there too. He became the commander of the Mexican army in Matamoros. And when Cortina captured Brownsville for 2 days, he sent word to him, you better leave because you're not going to get help from the Mexican government. Because they wanted to stay in good graces with the American government. See? And oddly enough, my son is a pharmacist. He's going to have an interview, I think in 2 weeks, with a CEO of pharmacy in San Antonio. And he is descended from A. Carvajal. Whether it's these people, we don't know. But he traces his roots back to the time of the Alamo, Goliad. So he might be. So I'm asking my son, I'll go to your interview so I can ask him. Maybe he knows. Okay. Now, Texas claimed independence right after the Battle of San Jacinto, which took place on April 21st, 1836. And they quickly moved to have Santa Anna, which was the general in charge and the president of Mexico at the time, to sign a treaty. Because even though they defeated his army, there were still 2 or 3 other Mexican armies larger than the Texas army. And they knew that. But since they captured the president, they figured, well, these guys will respect his order. And they did. They made him sign the Treaty of Velasco in 1836, May 14. And it was agreed in that treaty that hostilities would end, and Santa Anna was to order his forces south of the Rio Grande. That's where the Texas claim and the American claim came from, that the southern border of Texas and later the United States was the Rio Grande and not the Nueces. For you people that don't know, the Nueces River is about 150 miles up to 77 to where Cal Allen, you take the road to San Antonio or Corpus, that big old river there, that's the Nueces, about 150 miles. Of course, the Mexican government refused. Said, no. Santa Anna was a prisoner of war. So when he became prisoner of war, he no longer has the authority to sign anything as president. So they refused to accept it. The Mexicans never accepted Texas independence. And they certainly didn't say, okay, if you are independent, the border is the Nueces, not the Rio Grande. Because Mexico insisted when Texas was a part of Spain, the border ran from the Nueces River, west of San Antonio, in a zigzag pattern up to the Red River. They said that's the border of the province of Texas, not the Rio Grande. Okay. The problem with Texas was they still were very weak. They didn't have a big army. Only about 3 ships in their navy. They were afraid that Mexico was going to still try to come up here and take it over. And they were right. Mexico did it, attempted. And plus, they had a run-in with Comanches all the time. The Comanches were the most fierce. There was what they called the Great Comanche Raid. Killed a lot of people, raided, looted, burned, and they were under constant attack. So when the Mexican Canales, he was a lawyer, in 1839 came to the president of Texas, his name was Lamar, and he offered, I can build or create a buffer state between Texas and Mexico, just in case the Mexicans want to come up here and take it over again. But Canales needed Texas money, supplies, men to be able to do that. The Republic of the Rio Grande was what he called it. And it was made up of 3 northern Mexican states, Tamaulipas, Nuevo León, Coahuila. Why them? Because Santa Anna was a centralist. They favored a federalist government, which is like we have in the United States. And that, for you people that know Texas history, there was a constitution in 1824 that they liked, everybody liked. But Santa Anna got rid of it. That really ticked off the Texans, Tejanos. That's one reason they started rising up. And these people were for that as well. And when when Canales was up here, he promised any Texan who would fight for his cause $25 a month, which is a good amount today. Half a league of land, which is 2,219 acres in the New Republic, and equal shares in any loot taken. Ruben, show the boundaries. That is the Republic of the Rio Grande. That's Texas, of course. That is the Republic of the Rio Grande. Or what he envisioned it to be. So that's what he offered. Lamar officially declared Texas neutrality, but privately gave his approving word to it and turned a blind eye to any Texan joining Canales' cause. Two officers from the Texas Army, named Reuben Ross and Samuel Jordan, resigned their position with the Texas Army and joined the Republic of the Rio Grande Army as officers. The Republic of the Rio Grande Army was camped south of the Nueces River, so that's where they went to join. That particular time, the Mexican Army was under command of a guy named Antonio Zapata. And you're familiar with Zapata County up the Rio Grande? That's named for him. A lot of people think it was Emiliano Zapata. No, it was named for this guy. Okay? Now, Zapata was a real tough guy. He had a reputation as an Indian fighter. There's a story that says that while Zapata and his 40 men were returning from a raid, they ran into 200 Comanche warriors. Zapata charged them along with his men. The chief fired an arrow, hit him in the thigh, and they pinned him to a saddle. He pulled it out, chased the chief, caught up to him, pulled him down from his horse by his hair, and then kicked him to death with his purse. So he was pretty tough. So his reputation, I guess, was killer. First action. Canales' army moved south to Mexico, but the army only had 600 men, made up of Tejanos, the way I'm dressed, native Texans, American adventurers, and Cane Indians. Did you find anything there?
Not yet. Not yet. That's a new one for me.
Now, Cane Indians supposedly were the original natives to the Rio Grande Valley. I was talking to a park ranger, Danny, and he says maybe they were the Carancaos or the Coahuiltecans or Tamaulipas by another name. Maybe the Texans called them Cane, similar to the Aztecs. We call them Aztecs, but they didn't call themselves Aztecs. They called themselves Mexicas. It's the name Mexico. Okay, so Danny's going to try to find out who these guys really were. Anyway, they were promised land, freedom, so they joined the army in great numbers. Okay, when they moved south, the army was divided into two divisions. One was under the command of Zapata, Jordan, and Ross. The other one under Canales himself. The first engagement was outside of Mier. It's close to Camargo, Roma, Rio Grande, that area. The only problem is he ordered an officer's call to formulate a battle plan. The two Texan commanders, Jordan and Ross, were already attacking the Mexican army. They didn't wait. And they had the Mexican army pinned, not retreating yet. And they waited for Canales to bring the rest of the army and reinforce to defeat the Mexicans. Canales didn't move. Maybe he was angry because they didn't wait for his orders. Who knows? Well, Ross and his men charged the Mexican line, and after 20 minutes of hand-to-hand fighting, they surrendered. And when the Mexican officer came out to offer his sword surrender, one of the Texans told him, no, you need to give it to Canales. He said, no, I'll give it to you. You're the ones that defeated us. So he did give it to one of the Americans, one of the Texans. Canales stayed in Mier for about 40 days. History tells us that he was waiting on an omen to inspire him to go and attack Matamoros, because that was the next target. The only problem is, he might have known this, there were 1,500 regular troops and 18 cannon waiting for him. Maybe that's why he didn't get the good omen. Finally, he moved to Matamoros, and while outside of Matamoros, he froze. He stopped his army. There was a couple of skirmishes, captured a couple of Mexican soldiers. That was it. Then he called another officers meeting. He said, okay, since the Mexican army is not coming out to fight, we're going to retreat. That frustrated the heck out of Ross, the Texan Ross. And he left for Texas with 50 of his men. He couldn't afford to lose any men, but he took 50. Canales after that marched on Monterrey. The city was open because Arista, the Mexican commander, wasn't there yet. He went in, saw the city, and there was a convent. He captured the convent and he stayed there. Didn't move. That time the Mexican army arrived on Arista, which had a lot more men, more equipment, cannons, you name it. And that's all he did. That for a couple of days they kept looking at each other. And they been shooting or firing until on December 27, Arista sent spies into the Mexican camp, to the Rio Grande camp, and he bribed 700 soldiers to abandon the cause. So we only had a certain number of men, and most of them left. With this, Canales moved back to Mier, because Mier was a lot safer. It was after this that the Republic of the Rio Grande was declared. Delegates from the Mexican states of Tamaulipas, Nuevo León, and Coahuila met with Canales. On January 18, 1840, the delegates officially declared the three states to be independent republics. And of course they call it the Republic of the Rio Grande. With its northern border on the Nueces and the southern border at the Rio Grande. The flag did, Ruben. This is their flag. The three stars were the three Mexican states. Of course, red means blood of the martyrs, and then I have no idea what the white or the black means. But that's their flag. I think it looks pretty cool. A flag with three white stars and a red field with three stripes was raised over Laredo. Laredo was the capital of the Republic of the Rio Grande. And you can still visit the building. There was a Capitol building. Ruben, next one. That's it. It's a museum now. I've never been there. I'm going to make a point of going now. I say it's a pretty nice museum, but that's the Capitol building. They wrote a constitution and ratified it right away. The new president was a guy named Jesus de Cárdenas was president. Antonio Canales was commander-in-chief of the army, and Secretary of State was Jose Maria Jesus Carvajal. That's the one that got kicked out of Texas for not fighting on either side. Now word arrived that Arista had crossed the Rio Grande into the Rio Grande Valley. Of course they panicked in Laredo. Canales had only 75 Texans under his command. The President of the Republic and his cabinet fled to Victoria. Now Canales could have done the same thing, but he decided to turn and fight. One of the Texans, Jordan, said, okay, we only got 75 men. Let's go to the Nueces, recruit more people, and then come back. Canales said, nope, we're gonna hit them. So he turned and fight. And again, Jordan, angry, left for Texas, taking another 60 Texans with him. On March 3rd, the army arrived at Presidio del Rio Grande, which I think today is called Guerrero. I don't know if there's still people living there. It might be ruins, which is about halfway between Eagle Pass and Laredo. And by the way, that is where Santa Ana crossed his river in 1836 on his way to the Alamo. Because obviously there are chalanes, a ferry there to cross. That's where he crossed, Santa Ana. Now, needing supplies, Canales sent Zapata and 30 of his men to Santa Rita de Morelos, right across the border from Texas. To Zapata's surprise, he stayed overnight, and the next morning he was going to leave. And the people begged him to stay. Well, by that time, Arista had arrived and surrounded him. After 3 hours of fighting, shooting at each other, he was running out of supplies of ammunition, so he surrendered. Arista told Zapata, look, if you will be pardoned if you swear allegiance to Santa Ana. Zapata refused. Canales, the commander, heard the shooting, So he rode in with a small party, fired a couple of artillery rounds into the town, and then left, leaving Zapata to his fate. For 5 days, they asked Zapata to swear allegiance. Again, he refused. So on March 28, 1840, Zapata was shot. Arista had him decapitated and his head taken to his hometown. His head put on a pole and set in front of his house so that his wife and children and other Federalists would not forget his fate. Now Canales moved south again, fought Arista at San Fernando. If that's the same San Fernando, it's the one about 150 miles south of Matamoros, going towards Ciudad Victoria. The reason I know that is because I have relatives in Ciudad Victoria, and we used to go there all the time. And just an interesting fact, Escandon, the one that laid out the land grants in the valley, one of his houses is there. It's a museum today. He got badly defeated. He lost 250 men, so he retreated. Now he needed more money, more men. So he went to Austin and then to Houston, where they held formal dinners in his honor, thereby raising money to refit, rearm, and reorganize his army. Jordan, the same guy that got frustrated, came back and joined the army again. This time, Canales had an army of about 800 men. The only problem is, Canales didn't know it at the time, but 2 of his officers had already switched sides, switched their allegiance. And one of them was his own brother-in-law. So, Canales recaptured Laredo, moved south and sacked Ciudad Victoria. On October 25th, 1840, the army of the Rio Grande fought the Mexican army just east of Saltillo and was defeated again. The Texans, under the command of Samuel Jordan, again took his troops and retreated to Texas. Canales now believed, okay, the dream is over. He entered into secret negotiations with General Alista, November 16, 1840. Canales surrendered at Camargo. I think that's the town right across from Roma, if I remember correctly. At the same time, he accepted a commission in the Mexican army. Here's one reason he was able to be here 6 years later to fight the Americans. Shortly thereafter, the president of the Republic, Canales, surrendered to Santa Anna's officials. The Republic of the Rio Grande came to an abrupt end. It only lasted from January to November. Questions? I try to look for more.
Wow. Wow.
Say again?
Wow.
It's interesting. There wasn't a lot of information on it. I would look for more stuff and it was all the same.